know him as the man accused of being involved in Brittanee Drexel's abduction, rape, and murder. But Timothy Deshaun Taylor has never been charged in connection to that case. Instead, he was linked to it by an inmate's word, a man serving more than 2.5 decades in prison who came forward and said he saw Taylor at a stash house in McClellanville where Drexel was allegedly sexually assaulted, killed, and then later fed to alligators. Taylor has a new attorney now, and for the first time in an exclusive interview, we are hearing his perspective on this complicated case. Brittanee Drexel's disappearance is the underlying issue for why Timothy Taylor is now being prosecuted in federal court. His attorneys have called it a squeeze job by the U.S. Attorney's Office, accusing prosecutors of trying to put Taylor away for an unrelated crime, all in hopes of getting more information on those involved in Drexel's disappearance and death. Taylor's new counsel, Charleston attorney Chris Adams, says this isn't the way he believes the justice system should work.
This is a man who paid his debt, the full debt that was ordered by the judge, based on all the understanding of the facts. The federal government had no interest at all in the case. They've only resurrected and dusted off that old case because they're investigating another case that they can't charge.
In 2011, 2 years after Drexel went missing, Taylor was the conspirator and getaway driver for an armed robbery at a McDonald's in Mount Pleasant. He was 18 at the time and pleaded guilty to state charges. He was given a youthful offender sentence and served 18 months of probation. But because he pleaded guilty then, his defense team acknowledged he would likely have to do the same when the federal government brought their own charges against him 5 years later for conspiracy to commit Hobbs Act robbery. The U.S. Attorney's Office claims Taylor affected interstate commerce with his involvement in the McDonald's robbery and that his state sentence wasn't harsh enough to match the crime. When Taylor was indicted in 2016, his former attorneys argued that it was a violation of the double jeopardy rule, that he was being charged for the same crime twice, and that the federal government was abusing an exception to that rule by trying to put him away for a crime he already confessed to and was convicted of. Taylor's new attorney calls the prosecution's strategy fundamentally un-American.
And this isn't about one guy maybe not getting a harsh enough sentence in a case years ago. This is about anybody who's charged getting closure and finality in their case, which is what's promised in the Constitution. It's not what's being delivered to Mr. Taylor.
Taylor's federal plea agreement stipulated he could be sentenced to less time if he was truthful and cooperative in giving up information related to Drexel. But an FBI agent said Taylor was being deceptive when he answered no to 2 questions during a polygraph examination. Did he know for sure who was involved in the disappearance of Drexel, and did he ever see Drexel in person? Taylor now faces 10 to 20 years behind bars, and he's awaiting a sentencing hearing to find out his fate.
My understanding is a finger of accusation was pointed at him by a 25-year felon. A guy who's under a sentence of 25 years says, oh wait, I may have some information that'll help. People lie to get out of prison every day. So I think we should be very suspicious of any of that. And that's why this is why the homicide case hasn't been charged. There's no evidence to support the accusations. But nevertheless, here's poor Mr. Taylor getting squeezed by the feds.
Taylor's plea agreement also took away his right to appeal his sentence, unless he claimed there was ineffective assistance by his lawyers, among a few other things. But we don't know if that's why Taylor relieved his former attorneys earlier this year, because the motion was sealed.
I don't know whether they did everything right or not. That's not really my focus at this point. My focus is how do I help Mr. Taylor?
It's a complex case, and Adams is just getting started.
Fortunately, the judge has given me time to learn the case, and then I'll have to see. I mean, Mr. Taylor had entered a plea in this case, and we have to decide whether to try to litigate to undo that or whether to accept it. And it's not going to be an easy decision. I hate that we're here. I hate that the federal government has chosen to pursue a case that was already a conviction in state court. It's complicated. We could certainly litigate this into a worse position for Mr. Taylor, but I think there might also be a path to a better resolution. And so we're going to explore all those options and then make whatever decision is appropriate.
I reached out to Assistant U.S. Attorney Winston Holliday about where the prosecution stands on this case, and he gave me this statement. Chris has to come up to speed, then we'll have a hearing to sort all this out, whether the next step is to proceed to sentencing or some other remedy the court wants to consider. Taylor has never been charged in connection to Drexel's disappearance. No one has. In the studio, Caitlin Stansel for WMBF News.